Now, it's important to clarify that when people think of reporting in Excel, most people think they're pushing static data into a worksheet. When you run an inquiry in Sage, you have the ability to export the inquiry to Excel and then format that in a way that you desire. This is not what we mean by Excel-based reporting when it comes to Sage Office Connector. The disadvantage to that data when pulled into an Excel sheet is that it's static, which means that if you want to refresh the data, you need to start over. Each time running that inquiry and sending it on over into Excel. If something changes within 300, you don't get that information real time and up to date. Now, when we take a look at Sage Office Connector, it's creating a dynamic link between Excel and 300 CRE to ensure that as changes are being made, you're immediately notified of that information to ensure you get the most up-to-date information, whether that's a updated estimate on a job or some posted adjusting entries to your GL. All that information is now dynamically linked to your Excel sheet and available real time. Today, we're focused mainly around Sage data entry. With an ERP such as Sage, such processes can be tedious. With such a sophisticated system comes sophisticated workflows. When you're initially trained within Sage 300 CRE, your consultant probably taught you on how to input the data into Sage using the entry screens you see over here on the left. This is how the program was designed and how the programs envisioned end users would utilize the program. When we start talking about managing large data sets using entry screens such as these, the task can seem quite daunting. To manage larger data sets, we can use import functions within Sage. Most frustrations we hear stem from the formatting of the CSV properly. Another option, which we'll be going over today, has to do with writing values directly into the program itself using Odbc drivers. Now, when we take a look at that today, we'll be showcasing where you can take some of the information already available within Office Connector, and also different ways that you can enhance or design your own to push that information back into Sage. Now, understanding the differentiators between write and import of Sage Office Connector is also very important. You'll think of Office Connector import as some of the features and functions you're already used to today. Like I mentioned, AP import invoices, payroll import time, JC import estimate. As you notice, the common word in between all of those tasks is import. Wherever you see an import under Tools Import in the software, that's most likely where Office Connector can connect for the import feature. When we start talking about Office Connector Write, we're speaking to a direct write into the database, security permitting of course, to ensure that that information is put in the right place, but also respecting all of the database relationship variables that come with the 300 CRE system. And with that, I'll go ahead and hand it on over to our subject matter expert, James Coyle, to take you through that process.
That was a fantastic introduction. I really appreciate that, Coyle. As soon as I get, great, I'll be able to share my screen. Could you confirm you see the Office Connector Launchpad on your site?
I do. Looks good, James.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, thanks, everyone, and thanks for that great introduction. To reinforce some of the things that Coyle said, that we have various different technologies that can work together. And the first initial technology that people leveraged in very extensively is that ability to report, to place information however you want and be able to see it and interact. But soon thereafter, people started to notice maybe something was incorrect. The name of a vendor or address or an employer, something was incorrect, and they would have to then go to somewhere else to make that change. And is that really the most efficient way to work with information? And the answer is no. But how do you connect Excel to Sage in a way that respects security and allows you to work efficiently? Microsoft Access had that capability, but not a lot of people know Access, and it's Access projects are not always the easiest to maintain and distribute, and not necessarily as understandable, certainly not as understandable as an Excel workbook. So we're talking about being able to touch information as few times as possible and work efficiently. And that's where this technology comes in. So on the Launchpad, this is the Office Connector Launchpad. So this presentation, we don't go over query. If you're interested in that and you don't know it, then we have lots of presentations that talk about querying and assembling information in a useful way. But we also have a number of these templates on the Report tab that say Write at the beginning. So these are Write enabled. That doesn't mean I couldn't Write enable one of these other queries. I could, or one that I build myself, which I will do. I'm going to start with an example here on the Launchpad, and I'm going to show you various examples, especially ones I think might resonate strongly for this time of the year. But first, I want to just clarify what it is we're doing when we're talking about writing. So I've been affiliated with this technology for a long time, 35 years. It's been a long time. But when we think of this technology, I was originally a programmer, and you know, here I'm in my Sage desktop, and if I launch job cost or accounts payable, I'm in an application, and if I come here to set up, this is one way for me to set up or maintain job information or cost codes or categories. So there's some information on these tables that is put in there when you set it up or maintain, and then there's other that's accumulated information. So this is one way to get in here. I can go into a job and I can see the screen. So I'm using Sage. This is a Sage screen built by a programmer like myself. And you know, you have information organized however it's organized. But what if when you're maintaining information, you say, yeah, that's fine, that's all of it, but a lot of these fields we don't even use. And some of the fields I want to control what could go into that field. Can you do that on the screen? And the answer is no, you can't. What you see is what you get. So if you want to talk about a more efficient way to maintain information, that's what we're talking about. Being able to assemble this information so just the information you want is displayed. You get a chance to review it before it becomes in part of the system, and also the possibility of undoing work that's been done without having to restore from backup. That's what we're talking about. So we're going to affect the same screen, the data here, without actually having to use of job cost, and also potentially updating information here, but maybe somewhere else. So when we think about that, we think about efficiencies. So this is an example of job cost. And if I get out of here, you know, one of the examples I'm going to do has to do with categories, that could be thousands of these things. And what if some information on a bunch of them needs to be changed? Do you want to sit here and manually do that? There are ways that we can assist you right here to help you, because we could apply a condition that say only labor burden categories come up. So we can help you, but still that's just thousands of potential records that have to be modified and hopefully no mistakes made. Is that the right, most efficient way? You know, maintaining these dates and such like that. Maybe this information might come from an external source, like a scheduling type of a product, and you want to then update this. Is there a way for that to happen? And all of those things are kind of all combined in this subject. When it comes to like payroll information spread across a whole bunch of different screens, if you've set up payroll, you know what I'm talking about, or maintaining rates and things like that. So using a use of the application is one way, and you use it the way it is. But we're going to talk about a different way. So I'm going to show you an example from nothing of maintaining information. And in my example, I'm going to think about vendors. Okay, so that's what I'm choosing. It's a very simple example. So when I come in here into accounts payable, using a use of accounts payable, I'm pointing this out so you think about the real life scenario that you're dealing with. You've got the vendor number, the name, and all these different fields, and some of them have to be maintained periodically, like 1099 information or insurance, you know, and so what process do you go through to get this information and maintain it? I mean, just answer that for yourselves in your heads. And now I'm going to talk about perhaps a more efficient way. And that includes the custom fields here. All of this information is accessible with Office Connector and you can write to it. And although I have accounts payable open, it doesn't need to be open to accomplish what I'm doing. So what I'm going to do is just start from nothing. I'm going to bring up an Excel workbook, and it's empty, right? So in my example, and I'm just going to come right here, and once I'm introducing a concept that I'm hoping that you will be able to extend for your specific use, because you can apply this in a lot more ways than just this one example. So this is a starting point. But I'm going to come here to the add-ins, and I am going to use the query capability because I want to get information out of Sage and display it here outside of Sage in Excel. So I'm going to click the query, and I'm going to pick my folder, and then I'm going to draw information out. Kwahoo, Danielle, can you confirm you hear me okay? Everything's progressing? I don't want to lose everybody and not have people following me.
Yeah, no, everything looks great.
Great, awesome, thank you. Okay, so here I've selected the accounts payable vendor table. This is information I want to see in Excel. And I'm using this example because when this technology was first created, I actually worked with someone I had worked with as a consultant, and she was showing me how she was using the technology because I was about to demonstrate it. And the funny thing is that part of this presentation that she was doing, I thought she wasn't as smart as I originally thought she was. And then I had a paradigm shift that she was actually a lot smarter than me because of what she was doing. And I think everyone will appreciate it. So in this case, she wanted to pull data. I'm just going to make it simple, you know, where I'm pulling a few fields, but it could have been any of these data, you know, the 1099 information, insurance, etc. But I'm just going to grab a few just for my example. So she grabbed some data that she wanted the people to look at, and when we hit next, she added conditions for her. She only wanted the temps to deal with the subs of type, and I'll say one of, and I'm going to say one of the subcontractors or suppliers. Oops, I'll add. Yes, I know that. Sorry. Getting my steps out, sorry. So these two things I want to be met. I could have also said type equals subcontractor or type equals supplier. Either one will work. So I hit OK, and now I'm only going to get a list of those. Now on this sheet, you know, I was muted when the person was showing me this, but she made it static, meaning when she pulled the data in from Sage, she didn't have to type it, but it wasn't designed to refresh like most reports. And you know, I didn't really think about it when she was showing me, but I was curious as to why she did it. She did it for a reason. It was a good reason. Now she had here as of, you know, when she started it, so like 11/25/2019. So there's some project going underway, and this was all macro she had that would refresh and do this. So she clicked the button and boom, it would pull updated information periodically. And now in her example, she had the data that came from Sage, but she had the data that the person might find by making a phone call. So maybe these were temps or whatever. And in her example also, she had the color of the cell that the person was going to maintain a different color, right? And she did one other thing, well, beyond making it like whatever. She went into the format of it, and she went into protection, and we never told her to do this. It's just she knew Excel, and she unlocked that. And the idea is that when she did her macro, then when she gave this to a temp, all they see is what she wants them to see, and they can only change what she wants them to change. Now, hidden within the sheet, the temp wouldn't have seen this, would be a formula that she created, and it was totally simple. So this right here is the right designer, and I feel like this is the most powerful piece of technology we've ever created. Maybe financials is incomparable in sophistication and utilization, but Write can really transform your experience, how efficiently you work. So you just click this button and you pick the table you want to write to. And in this case, I want to write to the vendor table. And I could create a new vendor, but I don't want to do that here. I could create or modify, use that on like custom fields and whatever. But I just want to modify data. And then it says, okay, well, what vendor? So I'm building a formula right there. So the vendor is right here. So I just say the vendor is A5. That's the vendor I want to change. And then in this case, I'm only going to choose name, but I could choose whatever, right? And so I'm going to hit next. And now it's asking, okay, well, what field do you want me to get the name from to put back into Sage? Or do I want to just put the same value? And in this case, I want to put the value here in E5. So $E5. That's what it's reading. So now I have a formula. It will work, and I can copy it down. If I put a new name here, like the person called this, that column would have been hidden. They wouldn't even seen it. A1 Electric Incorporated. Now, this is different than Microsoft Access in that if you did use, I know Access very well, if you use Access, this would be an update or an append query, and the issue is when you put a value in, it writes it right in to Sage, and there's no audit trail, so not as good as this solution. In this case, nothing's been written there yet. She can review what someone's done. If the temp worked part of the day and left, she could see how far they worked and all that. I want you to compare that to if they were using the use of accounts payable and what they could see, what they could change, and if you would even know what someone did, meaning you're a controller and you have various people helping. In this case, you have complete control. You know, you're seeing what the person created, and you can make a choice. So this write function could write that value. Now, I noticed when she was showing me that these are blank, and right now our formula will protect you, but back then when she did it, it wouldn't. And she had put in right here, actually at the beginning of this, she just used Excel. She said if, so Excel functions can, our functions can work within Excel functions and vice versa. So she said if, here you, yeah. I'm all fingers. Okay, sorry. So if $E5 is not equal to blank, then write that value. Otherwise, I want to write something like nothing new or something like that, whatever she had. So if I copy this formula down, it'll tell me, again, that column would have been hidden when she hid that thing. Now, she did something else next to it. There was a checkbox here. I'm just going to use the letter U, and you'll see in a second what it is for. But so when she did this, when whoever, you have security to control who can use the designer and who could use even the standard license. You control that with administration. And there's also security in Sage. Well, inherently, you can't overwrite certain fields like amounts and things, but you can control what Sage will allow Odbc, Open Database Connectivity, to do. It's in your Sage security. I'm not going to go through that today, but if you're interested in more, you could contact Sage support or your consultants. But at this point, if I click this button, it looks at my entire workbook for all the write functions. It sees one right here, and it says, oh, this is what I'm going to write. I could approve it or not, but I'm just going to hit write. And at this point, it put it into Sage, and what did I do? So it's going to catch, if I make a mistake, it catches it. So I must not have mapped the vendor or did something wrong in the vendor. So let's see here. Oh, well, it said A5. And everyone on the phone probably saw, he's got the wrong column. Well, I did this on purpose. Okay, no, I did not. That was a true mistake. But it's just a formula. So I just changed it to C5, right? So you do want to know, like if you're playing with this, you want to get it correct, right? Try it on one piece of information. And you're seeing it validated before it writes, correct? When you click this button, it tells you what it's going to write and where it's going to write, so you would know in advance. So now when I hit write, I've got a success. All right, good. I'm glad I showed something that didn't work. A lot of times I only show things that work, and then that wouldn't be the experience you have. But this person did something really fantastic. And when it occurred to me, I was like, I wished I had it when I was a consultant. She had a value here on this formula, the value that would get written. And so she said, if like $EFGHH 5 is equal to like U, she had a checkbox, then get the value out of $D5, otherwise get it from E5. So essentially with this, if I have this value here, it's going to read this, and this is a query that is static. So if the information changes in Sage to this value, this doesn't change. It remembers what it was as of that point. So if I ever wanted to roll back to the prior value, I just would put a checkbox or a U. And you could do this with any of this data that you're maintaining. You can't do this any other way with Sage. Selective rollback that you can control, and you really can't do it with any other ERP that I've been aware of, but you can with this. So at this point, when you click this button, it's telling you, see, it got its value from the original amount, and I can write that back. So I was like, came off mute, and I was like, you created selective undo. And she's like, yeah. I go, well, how did you know how to do that? She's like, well, it's just Excel. All of this person came up with independent. We didn't tell her any of this. It's just using these formulas in sophisticated ways. So that's what the thought process here is, to think about how you use your time and the efforts, and can you improve on how people utilize or maintain information. And there's lots of ways to do this. So this was one example. Let's say I had another example, and I'm going to do it within the same workbook here. And just because I want to show you that when you click that button to actually send the data, it'll evaluate any write function. So you can actually have a sheet that will maintain multiple tables, and even different applications. It's really whatever you want it to do. So in my example, my second example, I know that I want to change my labor burden category. It's mapped to a certain GL account, and I want to change it to go to a different one. Now, this won't undo everything that's been done, but going forward, I want the category that's pulled in from the job cost to be different. And I showed you where you would have maintained that in Sage, and I'm going to do it quickly without having to even go into Sage. So I'm going to do a query, and I see people who use this function on the fly, controllers and all that, to do a lot of maintenance so quickly. So in this case, job cost category table is the one I want to write to. So I pick the category table, and it says, what are you going to write to here? So you could put the formula right in there if you already have data, but a lot of times what people are going to do is they're going to query, so they know what they're going to be looking at, what they're going to be working with. So I say I want the job extra cost code category. You have to pick everything that would be the key, to that table. And I'm going to display the GL account, the cost account, because on my set, the cost account is here on the category. So that's what I want to see on my report. And I'm only going to add or show categories that equal, and in this case, I'm just going to say literal value. So it's showing me a list of all my standard categories here, any category I've used. And I just want labor burden. I don't want to see all of them. So I hit OK. So now only labor burden categories will show, right? And I can say, and I could do this as a static one as well, or I could do it live. This one I'm going to do live. So, and since I put a condition, I would say labor category, I'd say, labor burden, or maybe I wouldn't even name it. If I was just doing this on the fly to change a whole bunch of things and off I go, I might not even save this. I might just use it to get something done. So that's what I want, the labor burden category. So I hit this, and now I've got a list of all those. It's the same list I would have seen in Sage if I went next with that condition on there. But who wants to do that? And so now I want to put all these accounts are to 5001, but I want to put them all to 5005. Now I could either put in 5005 here, right? Or since I want them all to be the same thing, I could do it differently. It's a choice you make. I think that there's a lot of merit in putting the value that you intended to write, so you have what was there and what you intend to write, and then have the formula read that column. But it's up to you. What I'm going to do is just put a formula here that will just put it all in there. So I click this button, the writing. I want to write to the category, right? These are categories. It's really simple. You can't create new categories with Odbc. You can create new standard categories, but you cannot create new categories under a job. Now, what I'm going to go into that in a moment here about what you can write to and what you can't, and what determines that. But it's the dictionary that comes with Sage controls what can be written so that your database is secure. You can't just overwrite amounts and things. So counting system wouldn't let you do that. But I'm going to modify the retrieved value. And so it says, what's the key? So for this row, it's in column B, C, D, and all of it on row 4. So I just put it in $B4. And this is the part you want to take your time to make sure you get it right. You don't want to put like the wrong value in here, because you could potentially change a lot of rows quickly. So something that's very powerful and good could become very powerful and not as desirable. So this is all correct for this row, and then the formula will of course copy down. So it says, okay, what do you want to replace? These are all these fields that you could replace, and I say, oh, I just want to do the cost account. But I've seen people use it to update descriptions, like uppercase and lowercase and whatever. It's just an alternate way, but working in a grid can be quite fast, and you can even put in rules to help you. So that's why people choose to do this. And so where's the cost account I want to write? I told you I could have put it in column G, but what I'm going to do is just put in a value. So I say 5005. So that's the other way to do it. And now I hit finish and I have a function. Now my recommendation is test it on one of them before you copy this down. So now if I click the formula exists, but nothing's been written yet. This is the part that will actually write it. So when you click this, it's showing me now that I had something to write for the vendor, right? I can let that happen. And there also within the same workbook are write functions for the category. So that's what's going to get written, and it's what I want. So I hit write, and then I'm going to get that report that will pop up. And what did I do? It says wrong type of value. What did I try to do here? Should have accepted that. Cost account. And I've done this example lots of times. But when you do stuff right in front of people, sometimes it doesn't work the way you want. So this particular thing, let me just take a moment here. Oh, it's a number, not text. Oh, James. Okay, so I think that's the thing. Cost account is a number. Yeah, I think I'll just do the formula again. You can edit a formula when you get, and I don't mind making mistakes in front of people and showing you, because this is what you'll probably run into if you use it on the fly. So, you get confidence by seeing someone do this. So let's just do this again. On the category table, I want to modify the value, $B4. And Danielle, if you see that I've done something wrong and you spot it, you can come off mute and tell me.
Yeah, sorry, James. I'm not familiar enough with
that's
Excel to catch those kinds of things
Yeah,
yet. So
it takes you a little bit of knowledge. So the cost account is what I want to write to. So the point there on the example is you do need to know what values are valid. So people will get that kind of a pop-up that I just saw. And if you get that, it's you've done something wrong, of course. And so that would be something you could get help with from support. Like I'm trying to write a value and I'm getting this thing, then it would be the type of field you're writing to. It's expecting a certain value that the user interface would enforce. When you're in Sage, it would enforce that. Here, it's going to enforce it when you actually try to write. But you also can put in user-defined controls, on what values could go into something. So like invoice code 1 and 2 on an invoice, normally on an interface, you can't control that, but with this, you could. You could say, these are the only values I want to go into that field. So Excel gives you capability to enforce what might go into a field that you wouldn't otherwise have on interfaces inside of Sage. So I want to put it under the cost account, and it says what field is going to provide the cost account, and I'm saying I want to put in and hit finish, and I'll copy that down. And let's see here. Let's see if I did it. And I like that. Okay. And normally I do type the value into a cell. I don't poke it into the formula as a fixed value. There, it worked. I don't know what I did before. You guys probably watched and saw. But see, now I've got this. And these, every time you write, you get this report of who wrote and when and what and all that. But again, if you ever made this and you wanted to put it back, now this one I did not make static. So when I hit yes, it's going to refresh those values. See, I don't have the value that was there before. And the reason is when I built that query, I left it as a query. I didn't make it static. So that's the benefit of this approach here, that when you queried it, it was static. It's a choice you make, one or the other. But once you get familiar with this tool, what you could do with it is amazing. So those are things on the fly that I did. But there are a number of options that are right here on the Launchpad. So now, often people say, well, what can you write and what do you import? So writing is usually associated with things involved in setup, setting up jobs, setting up vendors, customers, employees. If you can do it through setup, you probably can create new rows with write and what have you. I'll show you how you can determine if you can write and what fields in a moment. But these are options on the Launchpad. So there are some transactional based writing that you might do, because in this case up here, the invoice exists, but I may want to change something about the invoice or the distribution. And even if invoice approval isn't something you need to deal with, because you maybe have some other product that handles that, but let's say you wanted to control which invoices are selected for payment, right? So you circulate invoices, people chime in, and then you can go through and pay your invoices based on like check runs that you derived by collaboration. You could do that and utilize this as your example, your model. If you're interested in an example of that, put it in your questions or comments and we can follow up with how easy that is. It's really quite powerful. Equipment maintenance, budgeting in GL. Now down here are costs to complete, it's forecasting. Writing is one way to get values into the system. Another way is import on some things, certainly in miscellaneous worksheets. We recommend you use import for miscellaneous worksheets because it's going to create transactional data to back up the values. But you could write it. So work in progress, correspondence logs. I'm going to go into some payroll related things because that's going to be pretty important this time of the year. But the first example I'm going to use is this GL budgets. And I already kind of created one from that to showcase. So when you come into this initially, you'll have the information page that'll explain what this template does. Budgets are the one thing that you could either write with Odbc or you could import. You could do either. Either one gets them in there. This workbook here is ready to go. It'll have a list of your accounts, but there will be nothing in these columns. There's something in these columns because I put in budgets. But these are the values we're going to put into Sage. So there's an entry screen in General Ledger for typing in budgets. And a lot of people work in Excel and then they go into that entry screen and retype it in. Why would you do that? I mean, that's time consuming. And also, what if you make a mistake? This is going to be completely accurate. The other advantage of Excel is I could put the values I want to type, but probably they're in other worksheets or other workbooks. And in my case, there are. Like over here under bonuses, I have one account in GL for bonuses, but when I budget, I have more detail. So over here, I have a bonus detail sheet, the same account listed over and over, but there's different budgets and what I'm going to do. Now, in this example, I named the totals. So bonus for March, bonus for whatever. And I reference those totals on this page. So if I come down over here, see how that's, well, right there, I can tie this. I could say right here that this equals, and then I type in the name of that field. So I said, March bonus. All right, I got to get my defined names correctly. Sorry, beg your pardon here. Better pop over here and have a look. Oh, bonus March. See right there, it says bonus March. So you can name a field in Excel, right? That's a defined name. This is E8, but I can come up here and name it, right? Hit the name and hit enter. And so now it's known by two things. Well, then I could reference it right here on this page. I could say right here, I want to put in the bonus for March. So I see bonus, and then here they're listed. I already defined them. Bonus March goes right there, what did I do? I put minus. Okay, so you may know this from Excel, that you can do that. See how it pulled that value off that other sheet. Another technique I've seen people use is Excel's sum if function. They tell it to go sum, a column of values for this, or this column if the account number is equal to that. So then you can have multiple rows for the same account and have this reach out and get them out of another sheet or even another workbook. So this is your consolidation sheet. You reviewed it, and then you come up here and you hit this button and it puts it into General Ledger. It's very, very quick. So you get all of that with the right standard license. You can use these if you have the right standard license and you have the security to update that table. You'd be able to use any of these. I want to show this employee table. I actually have a couple things I want to show in regards to it, but I'm hoping that I've inspired you to think about other tables, like whatever you're doing. But this example just can be important at certain times of years. So in this case, you saw my example for vendors where the values were in rows. So that's one way. Some people prefer a form. So this one shows you kind of a form view. Again, I don't even have payroll open right now, but I could reach into payroll, assuming I have the security, right? My Sage security has to say that I can see payroll. And I'm going to have this value up there. I've got a lot going on in the background with my Excel, so I'm probably pushing my memory limits here. But this, since it's a template on Launchpad, you'll see how to use it right there. But if I come here, I can put in an existing employee right there, and it will pre-fill, and it says there, there's blank values here. Do you want to overwrite them with these values? And I'll say yes. So there, I could just change what's different for this employee. And so see how I can group the data? This data, if you're familiar with payroll, it's all over the place, including custom fields. You can lay them out however you want, whatever way is most efficient. Am I using the use of payroll when I'm doing this? No. Your payroll security still persists, right, if they have to have access to it, but I'm not using the use of payroll. So an HR person could have this information on a sheet, update stuff, click a button. If I wanted to create a new employee, I could just type the employee number, right? So there's an employee, and it says it's a new employee, and it says there's already data there. So let's say I'm setting up Danielle, and she's very similar to this employee. So I'm going to say, do you want to replace it? I'll say no. And then I could type in, her information. Here you go. I'll probably misspell something about your name here. And then whether you use comments. Did I get your name right, Danielle?
Yes,
Mr.
that was
Danielle
correct.
But you're not Mr. Let's make
No.
you, yeah, whatever the title is. So you control all of that and change the things that are different, of course, Social Security number. And then when I write it, I've set up a new employee. So this is another way, forms. And so I challenge you, like setting up jobs. There's an import example for importing estimates. And when people do that, oftentimes they want to set up things on the job that import doesn't allow you to do, like GL account or whatever. Use both import and write together. If it's writable, you could do it. So I guess that's the question right there, is what's writable. So like I can maintain a rate table or union items. We already have these set up for you. If this is the way you want to work, great. If it's not, you can build something yourself the way I showed you. But right here, this one will show you, you pick whatever rate table you want. It's reading your rate tables. You come in here, you change your rates, and you come in here and hit the button. You don't have to go to one screen or another. When I implemented I implemented a lot of payroll. And so this would have been, especially on union items, oh my heavens, there's a lot of screens that we have to make you go through. And I've had people say, do I have to do that every time? Like there's a change? And yeah, but not really. So here's the union table, change what's different. And then boom. And if you've set up the journeyman and then the apprentice is similar or all of that, just copy it and paste. And table, you can more efficiently navigate, get it set up right, boom, you hit the button and it writes. So I want to talk now a little bit, I've talked about writing. Let's talk about and what the differences are, but let's make that a little bit more clear. I'm going to show you two tools to use to help you when it comes to writing. One tool you have right here inside of Sage, if you have the report designer and you come into report designer, you can see what you can replace inside of Sage. And then I'm going to give you a little extra piece of information. If I come down here in Report Designer in available fields and I pick a table, let's say I want to do invoices and distributions, okay? So I pick that, and I'll choose vendor too, because you already saw. So I'll pick those 3 tables, and I click OK, and then I say I want include information for Odbc reporting. It's very important to do that. When I hit print preview, I'm seeing a list of values on that table, and see how it says whether it's replaceable. If it's replaceable, then you can update that with Odbc, with Write, or Microsoft Access. But if it's not, you can't. So these are, you could scroll through here to see the values. There's the key to that table. So if the key is replaceable, that means you can create new rows. So the vendor and the distribution you can't, but the vendor invoice and the distribution you can't. But the vendor table, look, all these things are replaceable. So I can. And then this shows me the types of values that it will accept. And if I don't put one of these types, you'll see it rejected. I did that earlier. So you've got an example. So that's one tool. There is another tool that we offer. It's called a Quick Aim Reference Manual. And I think it's going to be, there's a part of it in the slide deck about it, but it's a book that has your entire data dictionary printed out, and a lot of other, like how the tables are related to each other. It's a very useful tool, and that's something you might consider accessible. So that's one thing that's available to you. And then we alluded to another one in a slide, and that is we maintain a knowledge base for you of things. In addition to help, we want to make this as easy as possible. So if you come into this knowledge base on the Event One Software website, this knowledge base will have a lot of different articles, and there's 2 that are particularly compelling when it comes to sending data into Sage. So right here, it's like how to send data from Excel to Sage. If I click that, then you'll see the actual web page that slide was taken from. So it talks about when you write, it goes through the dictionary to get in here. So it does validate through the rules, but importing, we create a file that's comma separated, and then a Sage program takes it the rest of the way. So they work differently, and they're used for different purposes. So if you click here, you can see a list of all the tables in Sage, and you could determine whether you could write or import to it. So if you're unclear whether you could do something like contracts, I've had people say contracts, I want to do something with contracts. So I click here, the contracts, and it says with Write, you can update selected fields, but you cannot create contracts with Write, and import, Sage doesn't allow that. Now that could change. At times, Sage updates its dictionary to allow more functionality. And in some cases, you could request a custom dictionary through your consultant. So an example of that, I've had people want to create cost codes underneath a job, not standard cost codes, but cost codes under a job. You cannot do that. If I went to there right here, it would say you cannot create them with Write, but you could update values with you could update values. Can't do anything with import. But you could request a custom dictionary from Sage, and if the situation merits and you're not going to mess yourself up, one could be granted, and then the writing would be able to take place. You would be able to write.